guys want to start an unincorporated New Testament church, I'm your God. I know how to do it. Every church is unique, whether it's forming or whether it's one that's been in operation for a long time. One church I did 3 documents for. Another church took me 6 months and had 33 documents. So each church is unique. It must be done individually. There's no blanket. There's no set rule. That's why sometimes it takes time to work through. Okay. Why would a church incorporate anyway? Did any of these pastors ever go in and look under 26 USC 501c3 5081A? Churches and their auxiliaries are an exception. Now, that's exception. I didn't say exemption. But churches are exceptions. To really be honest with you, to me, the greatest miracle that God ever did, as it pertains to our country, nothing even comes close. Was when he allowed the First Amendment to be written. The First Amendment is all the church ever needed. It's all she ever needed. Well, I know I've got a written here. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof. What is religion? I know I shouldn't say this probably at this point, but my definition of religion, that's man trying to impress God, is religion. Christianity's words. I did this again. Sorry. Sorry. That would work. It'd go in, too. Did you mess up my hair? I want to know what happened to the fearless pastors that used to preach fire and brimstone. You know, pastors don't understand about their fabulous influence and how they impress people. Say a pastor gets up there and he preaches a great sermon. And believe me, I know a lot of pastors that from incorporated churches. They're great preachers. That's what's so terrifying. So he gets up there and preaches this fabulous sermon. There's an unsaved woman in the congregation. Someone brought her to church. So after church, the pastor goes up. Okay. The pastor, this woman now is questioning a friend that brought her to church. She says, okay, your pastor just told me that Jesus is my provider. He saves my soul. He will be my savior in every area of my life. He's my protector. He's my everything. Well, if this guy is such a great protector, why then did this church have to go to the state for protection through incorporation? Obviously, this church must not think much of Jesus or his ability to protect them. No, I don't think I'm interested in the salvation of your Jesus. Funny? No, it's not funny. I shudder to think how many times this happens. Incorporation is a stigma. It is a cancer that has eaten into the Lord's church. And we need to turn it around. We need to make a difference. We need to start churches that are true liberty churches, because only under the Lord is there anything that we vaguely recognize as liberty. Okay, questions on the incorporated church? Let's shift gears. Anybody got a question?
That's what my pastor said, right?
Are you handing out the mic?
Me? Oh, Lord. Southern Baptist.
Microphone.
Yeah, microphone.
Yeah, it's called a hierarchical structure. That means because the Southern Baptist Convention is a...
Could you repeat the question?
Can you come to the microphone and we're gonna do it this way?
Oh, don't really need it. I will anyway.
All right, it's a little inconvenient, but
That's right.
everybody will benefit.
I mentioned it. Was this on?
It will be.
It will. All right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I asked my pastor this morning, we were having a revival this week, and I came last night, and I encouraged him to come with me today. He's not here. And as soon as I mentioned the 501(c), he said, oh, well, we don't have to worry about that because we're called an umbrella of the Southern Baptist Church. That's why we're affiliated with it. Oh, I think it's the Southern Baptist. But, so I had that question, you know, how can we, they're doing good talking, not. So my question was, what does that really do for our church? I mean, could our church leave, or in that they?
You can, but it's a mess to try and get out. It's a hierarchical structure because the mother church, who obviously sent this or planted this church.
Right.
This is what I usually encounter. An incorporated church plants a church somewhere else, and they function as a subsidiary of the original incorporation from the home church.
So
It's called a hierarchical structure.
No easy way out.
It's not well, it takes a great deal, requires changing the name of the plant, church plant. It means I negotiated once because the parent church was not going to relinquish this guy.
Right.
So we did a negotiation, finally they let him go, but it's a mess.
Ministers need to either.
Sorry?
My pastor and the deacons would have to be convinced or need to get out from that.
Oh, sure, they all have to be in agreement before you even go to
Right.
the home church.
But I wish you came and listened to me today. Not that, I don't know if it's done good.
Thank you.
Is this, in your heart and mind, does it constitute swearing of an oath to create this corporation in violation of Jesus' command to not swear on oaths?
I didn't get that question.
Jesus commanded in the Beatitudes that we should never swear an oath.
Yes.
Does forming a corporate entity for your church involve swearing of an oath of allegiance to the state and any form? Do you believe it violates Jesus' command? At its core, it's like.
Are you talking about the documents now or mentally?
The documents, the actual signed
The documents,
contract.
no, there's not even.
There's not an oath, there's an oath involved, you don't.
No,
think it violates
not
that?
under 1023. No. Good question. Good, sir.
Are you familiar with David Barton?
Yes.
He's a good friend of mine. I was involved in a few months ago, about 900 pastors go down to Austin David Barton said that there's not one church in the United States that has lost their 501c3 status because all they do is threaten. When they threaten, usually people back up. Kelly Shackelford of the Liberty Institute, another good friend of mine, he defends the Constitution against this. But what they're hoping for in the future is that the government will pursue a lawsuit, take it all the way to the Supreme Court, and if we've got a good Supreme Court, which we probably don't, maybe we'll win that lawsuit and that stuff will be all behind us.
Okay, what is your question?
I said, has there ever been a church that you familiar with lost their 501c3 status under the federal government?
That lost it?
Yeah, lost it because
Of course, all you have to do is go into the various Secretary of States, they're all recorded in there.
they lost their status.
Yes,
Okay.
of course. Had their properties seized and given to another 501c3? Yes,
Church or
yes.
Wow.
Mr. Barton and I we'd have an interesting conversation.
Thank you very much.
Probably along the same lines here, do you see that in the future how the government will use this to stifle free speech in a greater way?
Yeah.
In other words, implementing greater control and greater power over what's spoken from the pulpits?
I do, and this is my greatest fear, and this is why when Pastor Baldwin contacted me, it was really, in a way, it was a blessing, in a way, it's not a blessing, but I see the hammer being dropped in small increments for 11 years. We have told pastors they're getting ready to do it. They think this is a joke. It is not a joke. Everyone says, well, I ask pastors this question: what will you do on the day they tell you you can't use the Bible? What will you do? What will you do? You're going to say, okay? It's coming. And don't think for a moment it isn't. You see, the devil, what's the greatest lie the devil ever told?
Doesn't exist.
That's it, he doesn't exist. Greatest lie he ever told.
Mm-hmm.
The way he's tearing apart the Lord's church is little pieces by little pieces, and men who won't stand up in the pulpit. Oh, this doesn't affect me. Oh, he knows my heart. Really? Well, how about what's coming out of your mouth? Go ahead.
Practical question. How does a non-501c3 church protect themselves from lawsuits?
Well, I'm just going to talk about that.
Next time.
Thank you for that question. Yes, that was great. And did I pay you enough for that?
There you go, John.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, have you heard of Taylor versus the Commissioner of the IRS?
I'm sorry to say that.
Taylor versus the Commissioner of the IRS. I have two questions. No? Well,
Specifically. So
yeah.
in your case,
no. Actually, that determined, well, the second question I have is, have you heard of what the IRS defines as a loose association in the IRS code?
an unincorporated association?
Yes, a loose association.
Yes, an unincorporated association is a
Okay.
corporation.
Okay, what the IRS has determined, if you read in the tax code, you can go right to it at irs.gov. We know it's not the government, right? The IRS is a private collection agency. But what has been determined in the IRS code is that all churches are subject to 501(c)(3), whether they're incorporated or not.
That's true.
So really, even if you're unincorporated, you're still, a church is still tax exempt, but a church still has no freedom of speech, even if they're
The
unincorporated.
church is not tax exempt. The Lord's church is immune from
Excuse me.
taxes. Big
Yeah,
difference.
big difference.
See, an exemption, that requires some authority.
Permission, exactly, I misspoke.